Then Jesus was led up by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. He fasted 40 days and 40 nights, and afterward he was famished. The tempter came and said to him, "If you are the Son of God, command these stones to become loaves of bread." But Jesus answered, "It is written, one does not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of God." Then the devil took him to the holy city and placed him on the pinnacle of the temple, saying to him, "If you are the Son of God, throw yourself down, for it is written, He will command His angels concerning you, and on their hands they will bear you up, so that you will not dash your foot against a stone." Jesus said to him, "Again it is written, do not put the Lord your God to the test." Again the devil took him to a very high mountain, and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and their splendor, and he said to him, "All these I will give you, if you will fall down and worship me." Jesus said to him, "Away with you, Satan, for it is written, worship the Lord your God and serve only Him." Then the devil left him, and suddenly angels came and waited on him. This is the gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Christ.
Please be seated. I remember a TV show years ago, and this is not going to be a show, Delaney, that you get. Maybe, though. Maybe. But when I think about this, I think about a phrase, and some of you might recognize it, and some of you it won't, and that doesn't shock me. But this is the phrase. Pork chops and applesauce. What was that? Brady Bunch. Thank you. I know, two of them right there. Awesome. Peter in the Brady Bunch. Pork chops and applesauce. When he's asked what they're having for dinner, he walks in and Alice says, "We're having pork chops and applesauce." Pork chops and applesauce. As he is trying to figure out who he's going to be. He's been clothing himself with different identities about who he will be in this world. And that was my terrible impersonation of Humphrey Bogart. Or Peter's terrible impersonation. Pork chops and applesauce. We all know what it's like to seek out our identity about who we are. The world knows it. Commercials know it. Advertisers know it. About what it means to be a person of importance in this world. What it means to seek out who you're going to be. I was driving on my way here, and one of my traditions is I put on the podcast, Wait, Don't Tell Me. And I miss it on Saturdays usually, so I play it on the podcast. And Peter Sagal, the host, gives us all kinds of important information. And one thing I learned today was how you can tell a villain in a movie. You see, it was leaked by a director that in movies, the villain will not be using an iPhone. Will be using an Android, but not an iPhone. Because I guess years ago, Steve Jobs and Apple did not want the iPhone to be associated with evil or a villain or something like that. So if you think we're not being influenced one way or the other, well, guess again. Let me check my iWatch. Oh, look at there. Anyway, we are. We're influenced about who we're going to be, our identity, and the people we are to our friends, to our family, and the people we are to the mirror that we look at and reflects back. This text today, the temptation of Jesus, is all about identity. It's all about that crucial word, if. If you are the Son of God. And then the devil lays out, or the tempter lays out, these challenges, if you will, these temptations. If you are, I know that you can do this. If you are. And we know the temptations we have around us. If you are truly in the tech world, you will have the newest Android or the newest iPhone. A friend of mine says, do you know how you can tell if someone has the newest iPhone? Oh, don't worry, they will tell you. Because we want to let people know our status, our importance. We want to let people know, one way or another, we matter. This text, the temptation story, is about identity, about who Jesus is, and then ultimately then who we are. When we met on Tuesday, pastors, we get together in the West Room and we discuss the texts. And Pastor Sue Ellen posed the question, how do we know what happened in this story? How does Luke, how does Matthew, how do the gospel writers know what happened in the story? Because in the story, it's the tempter and Jesus. We don't have the other disciples kind of leaning in and listening. We just have the devil and Jesus. So it probably meant that at some point, Jesus told this story to the disciples, relayed what went on to the people that were following him, sitting around the campfire having s'mores, because that's how I picture my Jesus. Just because when I think about close and important relationships, I think about making s'mores. It's just where my head goes. But sitting around the campfire, having a conversation, and perhaps it was after Jesus said, so what were you guys talking about along the way? And the disciples said, well, we were discussing who was going to be the greatest, who was going to sit at the right hand and who at the left. And then later on, around that campfire, Jesus says, I want to tell you a story about a wilderness experience that happened to me, where my own identity was brought into question, or the tempter came to me and said, if you are the Son of God, these are things that you could do to prove it, if you are. He's telling the story for our benefit because we know what it's like to have our identity questioned. We know what it's like to look in the mirror and think, am I lovable? If I'm lovable, if I'm a child of God, if I'm good enough, if I fare well in this world. We know what it's like to have those temptations get poured upon us. And it's the reason why all of this is tied back to the waters of baptism. Jesus is sent into the wilderness right after his baptism. He's baptized. He hears the voice that says, you are my son, with you I am well pleased. You are the beloved. And then right after that, he's sent into the wilderness to be tempted. It's important that those two stories are linked because they're linked for you and I. In our liturgy around our baptismal service, one of the questions that we as a congregation get asked, do you deny the devil and all his empty promises? Do you deny the forces that will pull you from God? And we say, we deny them. We clothe ourselves with these promises, with this water of baptism. We clothe ourselves because we believe in this identity, this baptismal promise that we put on. That we say, yes, I trust you, God, that you have cleansed me, you have claimed me, and we are children of the living God. Because we know the world, and we know how we can be tempted and how we can be drawn away. It's the reason that Luther said when he is tempted, he says, I am baptized, I am baptized, I am baptized. It's not some amazing incantation that he says like The Exorcist. It's reclaiming the promise that God made to us in the waters of baptism. It's reclaiming the promise that God has made to you and me. We say, I am baptized and that's my identity. I clothe myself with this baptism and that's who I am because God has said that's who I am. That when the world tempts me and says, you need to do this or you need to be this way in order to be loved and to be claimed and to be a child of God, we can say, no. God has done that for me in the waters of baptism. God did that for me in the cross. God did that for me in the Easter promise. That God claimed me as a child. And so I clothe myself with the waters of baptism. When we look in the mirror and we ask those questions, do I matter? Am I enough? God says, yes, you are. Anything else is an empty promise. Anything else is an empty threat. You are enough because of what God has done for you in this water and in this promise. We come and we receive bread and wine. We receive body and blood to remind ourselves to remember and to become a member again in this body of Christ. That as we receive this gift of grace, we again are sent into this world to remind the world that they too are loved. That they are children of God. They are beloved by the Creator of the universe. So on this day, when you experience temptation, oh, I preached on that. When you, oh, nice watch. When we receive those temptations that I want to seem like I matter, no ifs, ands, or buts about this. You are loved. God's grace covers you. God loves you. Whether you're an Android user, an iPhone user, whether you don't even have a cell phone, whether you can put all of the isms in there you want, you are loved by God. Don't let the tempter tell you anything different. The thing is about this story, when I hear all of these promises, even in the Garden of Eden, when the tempter shows up, and here, I have to think, look who's making these statements. The liar. So remember, when those things work in your heart, it's from the liar. And the God of the universe says you are loved, you are forgiven, and you are redeemed. And that promise